Here at the Just Baseball Show, we like to take an entirely different approach to covering baseball from everybody else. And we like doing things as trailblazers. We like trying something first. So we're going to do something that has never been done before and will not be replicated by any other outlet in all of baseball. You ready, Aram Layton?
Yes.
We're going to spend the next 90 minutes talking about the left field dimensions at Camden Yards.
I that one slipped under the cracks. I didn't even see it. I didn't even know they did it.
Yeah.
This is some hard hitting stuff.
Yeah.
They tried to sneak it in during the lockout. What was the purpose?
I don't know. Let me do a show intro and then we can get into that because we have a lot to get through. We're going to talk about the lockout. We're going to give you the update on what the hell happened on Thursday when the union and Major League Baseball met, what it looks like moving forward. We're also going to recap the career of a legend that you listened to. And we're also just going to talk about some other baseball stuff, do some housekeeping before we get into Padres week this week. But happy Monday, everybody. This is the Just Baseball Show. Jack McMullen, Aram Layton, Camden Yards, moving left field back about 30 feet and making the wall 12 feet high instead of 7 feet high. What do you take away from that?
They want it to be harder to hit home runs, obviously, but like that just tells me our offense isn't great. So let's just make it a little bit more difficult. I don't get it. I guess they want to play to the pitching strength. Like the Marlins did the same shit. They did the same shit when they built the new stadium, made it the biggest pitchers park on planet Earth, and it was boring. And guess what they did, Jack? They moved the walls in and they lowered the walls. I get it. Camden Yards is fourth in park factor. So, that puts them right behind the Cincinnati Reds. But it's not like this was some egregious situation here where just balls were getting out left and right. The way they positioned it was like pretty funny. They were just saying like, yeah, balls that we weren't expecting to leave the yard were leaving the yard and it was getting out of hand.
Maybe that's because your pitching sucks.
Yeah. Maybe it's just Dean Kramer. That's the problem, right? I don't think it's the walls.
No, I was going to say, so the Orioles led Major League Baseball, or I guess we're last in Major League Baseball, however you want to look at it. Their pitchers surrendered 155 home runs in 81 home games. That's nearly 2 homers a game.
But that's not because Matt Harvey's in the rotation, right? That's not because Matt Harvey made 28 starts, right?
I just don't think Keegan Aiken is making this any better. Like, think about it. The only guy that you can't use as the butt of this joke is John Means right now. Like, if you said Keegan Aiken, Dean Kramer, Matt Harvey, we've already used those 3 names. We can throw Cesar Valdez out there.
You know what the funniest part is?
What?
John Means gave up the most homers out of all of those guys. 30. So maybe maybe they're saying like, oh, we'll move the walls back and John Means will turn into the ace that Peter Apple always thought he would be. But you look at the rest of these guys. You look at so I'll take you through. John Means 30 home runs allowed. Matt Harvey 19 allowed. Jorge Lopez 21 home runs allowed. Yep. Keegan Aiken 17 home runs allowed. Bruce Zimmerman 14. Dean Kramer 17. They even had a reliever who gave up 9. And then, dude, they've got guys that didn't even pitch that much. Adam Plutko gave up 17. Spencer Watkins gave up 14.
Oh, my God.
258 home runs allowed.
Yet 155 coming at home.
So, like, pretty normal. Like, it's not that great. That wasn't that big of a home fate. Like, is it that much?
It's 20 more. It's 24 more than the Cubs surrendered. And the Cubs gave up the second most home runs at home this past year.
Okay.
So 155 to 131. Granted, like, you have far and away the shittiest pitching staff in baseball. It's not even close.
Yeah, it's not close. And it's just, I get it. Like, they want to make it a little bit more balanced, I guess. But what's the purpose of doing it? I just don't totally understand. I don't have a problem with it. Like, right. Like, it's funny, but yes, the more I think about the numbers, 155 home runs allowed at home versus 103 on the road. I guess that's what they're looking at, right?
Yeah, but like, isn't the solution sitting there in Bowie and Norfolk right now with G-Rod and DL Hall?
Yeah, right. But I guess they're like, okay, we want them to play up even more. I don't know. I don't totally get it.
I don't think there's a brick and mortar solution to this problem. I don't think you have to move the walls back. I think it's just get better pitching.
the funniest part about this too is that the Orioles are ridiculously cheap, to the point where I brought this up on the podcast a few times over the last year, but they asked Trey Mancini and I forget who else it was. Might've been Pedro Severino.
Was it Santander?
Or it might've been it was one of those guys to defer their like $3 million salary for that season. They're like, guys, we're really pinched right now because of the 2020 situation. Would you be willing to defer your $3 million? And they're like, no. Like, no.
I want it.
I'd imagine that this whole procedure here costs a little bit of money.
Yeah, but it's a T-chart, right? Like it's cost benefit analysis here. So if you spend the money on the outfield renovations, how much do you think they pumped into that? 1.5 million. You would have to pay a pitcher $3 million, and this renovation lasts forever. I mean, you spread this thing out. I read somewhere on Twitter, I'm blanking on who pointed this out, but PNC Park, when they were building their ballpark, they leaned on Camden Yards for some influence there. It's pretty obvious that Camden Yards just got some inspiration from PNC Park and how it jets in near the line. That's how Camden Yards is going to look. So if you picture what happens in left at PNC Park, that's kind of what it's going to look like with a bigger wall and a deeper wall in Baltimore.
Totally. And I actually kind of think that's fun though. I am kind of excited for that. I'm looking at it. This looks like mayhem. Straight down the line, you got the foul pole. But then right after the foul pole, jets diagonally straight out. So that's a pain. If I'm an Anthony Santander, I feel like he's playing more right. Whoever the hell's playing left, I'm pissed right now.
I was going to say, like, if I'm Ryan Mountcastle, I'm demanding a trade because not only are you backing up my power wall by 30 feet, you're also making my life hell when you slap me out and left.
And he sucks out there.
Yeah.
So like it made it way worse. So it jets out diagonally. Then there's like this corner. So it kind of goes back in diagonally a little bit too, giving you an edge, then goes flat, basically just directly facing the outfield, but then goes straight in, like straight towards you. And then and I'm thinking about that, like if you're Cedric Mullins, like you're running into left center, there's a literal like jet out and then it goes back in. We're going to get an inside the park home run in Baltimore next year for sure.
To left. Like down the left field line.
Down the left field line, inside the park home run. Like if it hits that wall just right, it's gonna ride it and just go all the way into center field. If you could hit one right on, like that rolls to the wall, it's gonna roll all the way around and like send it into center field like a pinball machine.
Dude, honestly, if you want to grow the game, give me more triples down the left field line.
Pinball, like just make it a pinball machine. So you know what? They're just looking out for the game.
I'm in. Hey, we said we were going to go 90 with the outfield wall dimensions talk. We're going about 7 minutes, and I already think it's too long. Let's move on to a guy that you listen to all the time. I listened to when I was really trying to get into calling games because he's so good at it. Mm-hmm. Dave Van Horn just hung it up. I mean, this guy, longtime voice of the Marlins, Florida Marlins, Miami Marlins. He was the voice of the Fish for 21 years. Before that, he was the inaugural voice of the Montreal Expos for 33 years, 56 years in a baseball booth. He won the Ford C. Frick Award, which is given to one of the broadcasters that makes a tremendous impact on baseball every year. So he was enshrined in Cooperstown as the winner of the Ford Frick Award in 2011. Dave Van Horn at 82 years old, hanging it up. Hell of a career. You got good Dave Van Horn memories?
Oh man, tip of the cap to Dave Van Horn, wonderful career. That's one of those, how people's voices can kind of take you back and memories and is like weird as it sounds. Driving in my dad's car, we would come back from baseball practice and my dad would always take me to baseball practice after a long day of work. My dad, would work 9 to 6, right? Pick me up at school from my high school or middle school practice and then take me to my travel practice, which is why I have arm problems. It's Florida.
Yeah, absolutely.
But sidebar. And, like we'd be coming back at like 8:00 and, we'd always throw it on in the car. And Dave Van Horn's voice, honestly, like it took me a little while to be able to listen to the games on the radio again, because it would take me into the car with my dad. And I recently was listening again and was able to kind of get back to doing that. But, he was just always so good. My dad and I would always listen to the games, 40-minute drive back from practice to home, or we'd be, on the road, going to a tournament, whatever it may be. And my favorite thing about him is I always think it's hard to have your own home run call. I always think it's kind of corny at this point because you're just going to have something that's either already been done or you're trying too hard or it's weird. His was always up, up and away. And I was like my favorite thing in the world. I thought it was simple. He was excited. It was just natural. And he was phenomenal, had a great career and a guy that probably could have went to a bigger market, but seemed to just love what he had going on in Miami.
So there are a couple that aren't too gimmicky for me. Up, up and away was one of those that was not too gimmicky for me. It was the perfect signature call. Dwayne Kuiper. It is out of here.
Yeah.
That is signature and it's awesome. I can't get enough of that. I know it's coming. See ya with Michael K really pisses me off because he holds the S forever. See ya. Like, I don't need that. Gary Cohen, it's out of here is awesome.
Yeah.
And then John Miller, the adios pelota, like that is phenomenal. Too.
John Miller could do it whatever he wants.
He could do whatever he wants.
And I know you and I differentiate on this one, but Santa Maria can get out of here. Matt Vasgersian, I'm sorry. I like great guy, but no. I'm not a fan of that one.
Yeah, I think he's doing a better job picking his spots right now because he doesn't do it every time. Victor Rojas, also a longtime voice of the LA Angels, had the big fly going, and that was big time.
That's in our intro.
It is in our intro. But yeah, I think Dave Van Horn up and away is totally up there. And that guy, you would turn him on. I would get in the habit of whenever I was listening to a Cubs or White Sox game, always had Pat Hughes and Ed Farm. Always. I could always turn to them. But when I got more interested in this, when I got more interested in like actually pursuing that craft, I wanted to listen to everybody else. So the MLB at Bat app was beautiful because you can choose the different game like audio file for each side. Mm-hmm. So whenever the Cubs were playing the Marlins, I would turn on Dave Van Horn and Glenn Gaffner, who is phenomenal.
I was going to say Geff is awesome, and I'm really excited about him. I'm assuming he's going to take over there, and Geff is great. I'm so pumped for him. Such a nice guy. Has made himself available to me through the years. Through phone calls and just being able to pick his brain and through when I was trying to figure out what my path was. So incredibly nice guy and a great broadcaster as well, who I think, takes a little bit of his own angle, but I'm sure has absorbed plenty of Van Horn through the years as well.
100%. And I love those guys. Glenn Gaffner, another guy totally available with his time. And he's always gracious. I've had the chance to talk to him a couple of times just because he's a Northwestern guy. And, you got that Chicago connection going here, but Geff is great because he likes the advanced analytics. He also used some of that tutelage from Dave Van Horn there, like you see with Dan Dickerson, who took some stuff from Ernie Harwell in Detroit. Dan Dickerson is amazing as the voice of the Tigers. Like these are just guys that you pick up on. And now with baseball as this national, international thing, you have the local broadcast, but local is not a thing anymore because of this app. And it's kind of beautiful.
I used to go to sleep, dude. I would in the Cape when I was in the Cape, my first full season broadcasting. I'd put my head on the pillow, and I'd fly around on the app, listen to different people, listen to different games, and I go to sleep. Sometimes I fall asleep with it on, and it's really cool. I highly recommend it for people that there's something different about taking in baseball from the radio side. Of course, you want to watch the game. And I love to watch the game more than listen, obviously, when it comes down to it. But every once in a while, mix in just a radio call for a couple innings, and you'll really appreciate all the little intricacies that it brings to. And it's so much fun.
Hey, best of both worlds. On your laptop or on your smart TV, you have audio options, and you can overlay the radio call with the visual there.
Really?
It's kind of nice.
I would love to do that because radio calls are always better.
I'll teach you how to do that. Let's talk about the lockout because we should be hearing these voices on the radio in due time. Hopefully at the beginning of April. I don't know if we're there or not. Here's the latest in that department. I pulled a lot from Bob Nightingale with USA Today. Bob Nightingale, may be off at times with the news breaking stuff, but when he's got to cover a lockout, I think Bob Nightingale is one of the key sources at doing so. He said, I'm just going to run through this and then we'll take it. I'm going to spit out a lot of information at you guys, and then Aram and I are going to try and decipher bit by bit here. So according to Bob Nightingale, the meeting between Major League Baseball and the Players Union lasted a little bit more than an hour this go around, and it happened via video call. Also, according to Bob Nightingale, Major League Baseball pitched 3 things to the Players Union that the union had previously brought up to the ownership group. So Major League Baseball proposed significant pay increase for players with 2 years of service who still aren't eligible for arbitration. However, and I'm going to need you to explain this to me, there's a certain group of 30 or so players right now who are like in the upper levels of service time, but wouldn't be eligible. They're called Super 2 players who have like between 2 and 3 years of service time right now. Mm-hmm. What's the deal there?
So Super 2s is unique, and I might even butcher it to a small degree, but my understanding on Super 2 is that if you're a player in that group that you just identified, but to get into that smaller portion, I think it's like 22% of the players. If you're in the top 22% of players who would be on the cusp of arbitration eligible in terms of days of service, and this kind of contributes to the service time manipulation side of things too, because if you're on the high end in terms of how much you've played through those 2 years, you're identified as a Super 2 guy. So top 22% rounded to the nearest whole number in total service time in the class of players who have at least 2 but less than 3 years of major league service time. So it kind of identifies that group right in between that would be on the cusp of arbitration, and the people that are on the higher end in terms of service time are in a special designation here, which is Super 2 players. If 2 or more players are tied at 22%, all such players shall be eligible.
Oh my God.
It's a little ridiculous, but it does give a bit of an advantage for players that are playing a little bit more to get to that arbitration point a little bit sooner. But it seems just so unnecessarily complicated.
Yeah. So the gist now is they proposed a pay increase after you hit your second year of major league service time. So the year before you hit arbitration, that last pre-arbitration year, you're going to get a pay jump there. But there is some issue here. I think there's also issue within the players union because every player with a singular day of service time on this date is grandfathered into the old rule. So it doesn't affect any current Major League Baseball player. The only players that it affects are the Spencer Torkelsons and the CJ Abrams and everybody else that hasn't sniffed Major League Baseball yet.
Yeah, it's such a weird specific point too, where it's like a player with at least 2 but less than 3 years.
Yeah,
that's in the top 22% of that group. Just like, let's just simplify this thing and just get guys to be eligible for arbitration sooner. And let's just leave it at that. Like, what is this 22% of players in between the 2 and 3 year mark, just to be able to identify some players that are being used more to get a little bit of an expedited process to arbitrate? Like, no, let's just make this a little bit simpler and just make it the way it should be. And I think the rule in itself is just too confusing. If fans can't follow it, then why are we doing something like this?
Yeah, and I understand the contractual jargon. Like in the NBA, you've got bird rights and things like that. You've got a whole bunch of things that go over most fans' heads. And, you know, fans might sometimes also get confused with restricted versus unrestricted free agency and things like that, and matching offer sheets and things like that. But if you really dive in there, you can kind of wrap your head around what's going on here. With this, it just feels like it's layered and layered and layered. And it's like, okay, why are we battling for 30 players right now? Like, that is the Super 2 group.
And the Super 2 thing too also just makes it more incentivizing, I guess, for teams to really manipulate service time. So you don't want your player to be in the top 22% because then he's a Super 2 player, which is an advantage to him.
Right.
So they did it for the players, right? But at the same time, it just further incentivizes teams to manipulate service time.
And Major League Baseball also came to this video call on Thursday with the master plan to end service time manipulation. And that is to provide additional draft picks as an incentive to promote guys to the big sooner. So naturally, yes, the Detroit Tigers are looking at Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green and saying, you know what, let's get him up. Let's send him into free agency a year sooner so we can get this 10th round draft pick. That'll be perfect.
Yeah, I think the elimination of the Super 2 arbitration system is a way better start than that, right? Yeah. And I think there's a legitimate chance that we could see it eliminated because I just think it's stupid. And if I'm not mistaken, MLB is showing some pretty solid willingness to eliminate that, right?
Yeah.
So I mean that's the best case there. But when it comes to the prospect thing, the top 100 ranked prospect on its opening day roster that finishes in the top 5 in voting for a major award, which means MVP, Cy Young, or Rookie of the Year, during one of his arbitration eligible seasons, the team would receive a bonus draft pick. I don't even know how to fully feel about that. Because, well, first of all, whose rankings? Are we taking a consensus? Like, are we taking it from Baseball America, Fangraphs, and MLB.com? And just baseball?
And just baseball.
Yeah. Like, because all of these top 100s are so different. And MLB.com's top 100 to me is slower to catching up, right?
Yeah.
So if you have some players that I'm very excited about that we have on our top 100 that aren't on MLB.com's that
and they're nowhere close to sniffing MLB.com's.
No, and they could be up next year. And teams value them the way. And I'm not saying our list is better than MLB.com's. I'm just saying there's definitely some players that are missing off of some other top 100 lists that we're higher on, and maybe vice versa too. But the larger point being, there's players that aren't on those top 100 lists, like Trevor Rogers, for example. Man,
yeah,
I'm yelling to the heavens about Trevor Rogers before this year. The Marlins were absolutely amped on this guy before the year. He's not on a single top 100 list, right? So, and maybe one after pitching well at the end of 2020, that guy would not have been eligible for this type of protection that would allow him to potentially not get his service time manipulated because of the fact that it would be incentivized for teams to bring him up right away. But everybody's looking at this guy as a top 100 prospect in the front office realm, but not in the writers realm for MLB.com's top 100. And now that's going to benefit teams. Like, you're going to have teams withholding information on prospects. You're going to have teams that are trying to like fudge with the rankings because that would benefit them because they could still manipulate their service time. Like, I don't think that this makes any sense because we've seen that there's a large discrepancy between prospect rankings and where teams actually value some of these prospects.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the NL Rookie of the Year this year, and Trevor Rogers, like you mentioned, I mean, he's not close to near the top, and he's one of the best pitchers in baseball this year right now.
John India wasn't sniffing the top 100 lists.
Not at all. He was 53 pre the 2019 season, and that was off of his draft year when he went top 10. He was not sniffing the top 100, and then he came out like gangbusters in the alt site in 2020, and then he comes up. Everybody knows, if you did the reading, that he was going to be the everyday second baseman on opening day, and he was not a top 50 prospect. Keep that in mind. There is no gauging this stuff. You have to contextualize it. And nobody's doing that right now with a lot of these major outlets. So how are you going to judge somebody like that? And how are you going to incentivize not holding a top 10 prospect down, right? Like, try going to the Cubs and saying, you got to get Chris Bryant up right now, or else you don't get your competitive balance round B pick. It's like, yeah. Fuck you. I want another year of Chris Bryant.
I think it's outrageous. It's tough too, because on the team side, right? Like, if you and I are in the front office, like, it's easy to say, oh yeah, I wouldn't manipulate service time. But if you're trying to do your job to the best of your ability, why wouldn't you?
You're going to manipulate service time if you're trying to do your job.
It's like if the IRS missed some taxes I owe. I'm not going to call them up and be like, oh, hey, you missed another X amount here. Let me send that in. Right. This is not a loophole because it's pretty obvious and it's front and center, but it's basically an issue in the system that teams can utilize to their advantage. So what they're trying to do is incentivize not doing that. But this is not necessarily the way to do it. I think an interesting start would be from a 40-man roster standpoint, because most of the time if a prospect's close to big league ready, they're on your 40-man roster, right? Because you had to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, which I also think is great. The Rule 5 draft is phenomenal for, getting players up to the big leagues and not having them just stashed away.
Yes.
I think that could work hand in hand with the 40-man roster, right? If a guy's on your 40-man roster for X amount of time, you got to bring him up. Or if he's on your 40-man roster, that's where the draft pick incentive could come in, because you have a lot of really good prospects that are on the 40-man. And again, like if they're not on the 40-man yet, it's because they haven't been stashed in the minor leagues that long. Sure, you're going to have the Bobby Witts of the world that fly up, but I think for the most part, this would kind of help to a degree. I would say like Chris Bryant probably was on the 40-man at that point, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a start, like having 40-man roster guys being eligible for this kind of specific thing, because it's just so hard to conceptualize which prospects should be eligible and which prospects aren't, because it's just such a fluid and abstract thing when we're talking about ranking prospects in general. I just don't know if going by top 100 rankings is the way to do this.
Yeah, man. And I mean, listen, like you mentioned how volatile prospect rankings are. Like we're starting Padres week right now. Mackenzie Gore was a consensus like best pitching prospect in baseball coming into this year, and now he's mid 60s, mid 70s right now.
Yeah.
It just changes with the flick of a switch. Another thing that Major League Baseball proposed was to make the draft order a little bit more like the NBA with a lottery system, and not like the NFL where you just give the number 1 overall pick to the worst team. I like that. I don't like tanking for 1-1.
No brainer, because especially when you get into the dog days and you have teams just rolling out like the Orioles pitching staff that we talked about, forget that. Like that does not bode well for baseball when you just have teams fully mailing it in. And I think they'll probably still mail it in to a degree, but if you disincentivize that at least a little bit, a team knows that they're not going to for sure get the first round pick. Why mail it in then? Then maybe you'll be more willing to call up some prospects and put better product on the field to fill seats, because you're like, okay, there's no difference between us being the worst record or the third worst record. So we might as well put a semi-decent product out there,
right?
And give fans a reason to come here. I think that there's the DH and the draft lottery, I think should be no brainers.
Yeah. What they agree on 2 things already. So there we go. We can check 2 things off here. We are 2 steps closer to ending this lockout. Both Major League Baseball and the Players Union agree that there should be a universal DH. That's my understanding here. That's Bob Nightingale's understanding at USA Today. Both sides agree that there should be a universal DH. So thank the Lord, we are done seeing pitchers hit.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
100%. And I think that's all but settled. Back to the prospect thing.
Yeah.
Tim Dirkes of, am I saying that right? Dirkes. How would you pronounce that?
Dirkes.
Dirks? Really?
I think so.
Tim Dirks. Yeah, that does sound way better. Tim Dirks of MLB Trade Rumors. He's actually very excited about that proposal on the prospect side. And he used Vlad Jr. as an example, which I think is an interesting example, because Vlad Jr. was held back until April 26th in 2019. You mentioned that. And obviously he didn't have the biggest year his first year, but this is for all years through up till arbitration, right? So he ends up finishing second in MVP voting this year. And that would have got, the Jays the 31st pick or 32nd pick in the draft. That's a pretty solid incentive there, right? They delayed calling up Vlad Guerrero, and that was annoying, right? We were all saying, here we go again.
Yeah.
When he wasn't called up till April 26th. My question is, would you rather have 1 extra year of Vlad or the 31st overall pick?
I know my answer.
1 extra year of Vlad?
No, I mean, the 31st pick could be a gem.
Okay, good. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. 'Cause honestly, I'm thinking about it. But no, I think you're getting a first round pick essentially there. that does make it.
Wait, hold on. Before we move, I was being totally sarcastic. I want one more year of Vlad.
Okay, I was trying not to embarrass you on the podcast. I was very confused for a second.
My God. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think I would be an absolute idiot if I said that I wanted the 31st pick instead of one more year of Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Oh, I know. I made a mental note. I was going to talk about it after we stopped recording.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't in the mood to dunk on you today.
I understand.
I've
That's
seen
very
the
nice
Chicago Bulls. Yeah, I mean, I've seen the Chicago Bulls play for the last week. I don't think you need any more.
Yeah, we'll finish the lockout talk, then we'll talk about the Bulls here.
I know. I just had to drop that little Easter egg.
Yeah.
I think it's good though. There's a lot of situations where you're going to lean towards the pick, right? Vlad Jr. is the pinnacle in terms of prospect value, right? This is a guy that pushed the limits of what we've seen. I'd say him and Wander are in their own bucket in terms of prospect excitement that we've seen over the last decade. So it's a little bit of a unique example there. I think it's a good example for Tim to look at. But what about when we're talking about the guys like the Corbin Carrolls of the world, right? Yeah. A guy that is super good, but I don't think he's competing for an MVP in his second year, right? No. I don't think he's an all-star in his second year. And I love Corbin Carroll. I think he's going to be a very above average regular. So how do you get the reward for Corbin Carroll when he's probably not going to be a rookie of the year? He's not going to finish top 3 in MVP. How many guys even do that? Not many at all in their first 3 seasons. This protects the Vlad Juniors and the Fernando Tatises and those types. But you know what, dude? Those aren't the only guys getting manipulated here with service time. This is happening to the Corbin Carrolls of the world and the Alec Thomases of the world. And I'm not just picking on the Diamondbacks. I don't even think they're going to.
No, keep going. Christian Robinson.
Yes. Yeah. But those are guys that I just look at off the top of my head that are like close to big league ready, should make an impact right away. But they're not going to be all-stars. I look at, even other players who look at it through the top 100. I mean, I would even argue that Adley Rutschman probably won't even be a MVP finalist in his arbitration years, right? He might not win rookie of the year because he might slump a little bit. And now you're not getting a draft pick, but you threw him on your roster opening day. Now there's like this absurd pressure on the prospects to perform right out of the gate. And I think it's I think it's a good try. I think it only works for the elite of the elite. And how many prospects are rolling out and are MVP finishers in their arbitration years in the first 4 seasons? It's just not that common.
Listen, you said this only benefits the elite of the elite, but you got to keep in mind, we're talking about 30 billionaires right now. Like that's who baseball's arguing with right now. 30 billionaires. So you're talking about the elite of the elite right now. Baseball is a sport where when you looked at the conversations during the stoppage due to COVID in 2020, I mean, you had guys like Max Scherzer pounding the pavement for no salary proration here. Like we are talking about multi-millionaires only making multi-millions of dollars and not having the second multi. So like, that's why this is, I think, pissing everybody off.
Yeah, no, totally. And my problem is here. I'm a big proponent of not, and I've mentioned this a few times, right? Especially when we get into this topic, not just shooting down an idea and then not offering a better solution. Yeah. And that's the thing is I think this idea is just not quite there, but what's a better solution? I don't know.
It's complex. It's really hard.
So is this better than nothing?
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So are we cool with it?
I guess.
But the problem is what is a top 100 prospect? We go back to the basis of it, right?
Right.
Because this is another instance here where I have some guys like way up there that, I don't even know if are on the top 100 list for some others for where they'd be basing it off of. So at that point, what happens with those guys? Jose Miranda. Here's my perfect example. Jose Miranda of the Minnesota Twins. He's 76 on our top 100. I think he's starting to creep into other top 100s, but you'd be surprised. I don't think he's on MLB pipelines. If he is, he may have just recently been added. Regardless, he's not on that many lists. That's a dude that should have been up last year. And that's a dude that should be up opening day next year. But if he doesn't get that protection, with the rule and he doesn't fit under that umbrella, he's not getting called up.
Yeah. Say hey to May 10th.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? MJ Melendez would fit in that same bucket because he came into the year and was not an insanely highly ranked prospect. And I don't think we're seeing the prospect rankings totally come around on him yet like that either. So what if you're a breakout guy that puts it together? Like, you're not getting protected. Even like I just think that there's definitely not enough there, but I don't know if there's a better solution. So
well, dude, how about like Brash? How about Matt Brash? And
yeah, Matt Brash. Yeah.
Same deal.
Came out of freaking nowhere. And you know what? I think he should be up potentially pretty early next year, but that won't happen. It won't happen. So yeah, I think it's a really fluid topic that there has to be some more ideas fleshed out here. But I do think that there's an angle from the 40-man roster component. Like, if he's on the 40-man, the clock should be ticking. Like, just because you put him on the 40-man and it protects him from the Rule 5, there should be another clock that's ticking there. Like, from a certain point, when you put somebody on the 40-man, they have to be called up X amount of days afterward, or, you're not going to be able to hold on to that guy. Like, he's going to be thrown back into the Rule 5 bucket. Like, the Rule 5 draft, you protect a guy on the 40-man for X amount of time, because Miranda's a guy that late bloomer. So this would protect the late bloomers, right? Because the late bloomers are the ones that are ending up being Rule 5 eligible because they're in the minors for longer, because they didn't quickly climb up like a Miranda.
Yeah.
This would protect them because it's like, oh, they're on the 40-man roster because they're good and the team doesn't want them to get snatched away.
Right. And getting put on the 40-man is like that breath of fresh air for teams. It's like, okay, the clock resets now. We don't have to worry about that anymore.
Exactly. And for players, it's some don't want to be like, some want to get picked in the Rule 5 draft, right? So there's players that if they feel like they're going to be stashed still, I know guys, the players I've talked to in the minor leagues this year that were hoping to not be added to the 40-man because they knew if they got selected to the Rule 5, guess what it does? It forces the team to bring you up to the major leagues. There should still be a clock for guys that are added to the 40-man of their own team to have to get brought up at a certain point. I think that would really make sense, because when you have players wanting to get displaced from their current team, not because they don't like the franchise, but because it's advantageous to be selected in the Rule 5 draft.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that drastic.
I hear you. I absolutely hear you. And the thing is, like, the sentiment is there. And as fans, it's like it's like we really have to pee and we're squirming around, right? Like, we just want to get this show on the road. We want to get moving because we just want baseball to happen on time. But like, they got to sort this shit out. And this is the one time every however many years that they have to actually sort this shit out. So we talk about that. We talk about what they disagree on. They agree that there should be a universal DH. They also agree on postseason expansion. How many teams are in the postseason is where they differ. The Players Union wants 12 teams in the postseason. Major League Baseball wants the expanded slate to 14. You can't meet in the middle at 13. I would say 12, because what I like about the MLB postseason is it's short and sweet, and you have the best teams in it. And some good teams miss. I'd rather have some good teams miss than some bad teams get in.
I mean, look at football right now. The NFL playoffs, like the wild card's been, I think a lot of these games have been a dud, right? There's no business for the Steelers to be in there. That was a blowout. I think that the Patriots, they had no business being in there. That was a blowout. Like, we had a lot of dud games. I think we would see the same in an expanded baseball postseason. You'd have some teams at 14. That's half the league. 14's half the league, right? I mean, what I love about baseball is how hard it is to get into the postseason. And then when you're in there, yes, it's baseball. Anything can happen. But I think if you got like the Brewers against a team that, what's a team in the NL that was just like maybe the Reds? Let's say the Reds.
Right.
The Brewers' 3 pitchers would make such quick work. It would be a waste of time. It would be a legit waste of time.
And you know what?
I think it'd be bad for ratings.
And that's how I feel. That's how I feel about the 1-8 matchup in the NBA and the NHL.
Oh, sometimes. It's a joke, man.
It's a joke.
What was the 1-8-1 upset? Right? It's like it's happened like once.
I think so.
It was in our lifetime. It was 12 years ago, I think. But regardless, it's just so rare. It would be the same thing, and it just wouldn't be fun. Like the 8-1. So, for example, I'm a Heat fan. When the Heat would play in the first round, when they had LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, I love the Heat. I'd watch the first half and then I'd check out. They're playing like the Hornets, or something. I don't care. The Hornets finished 2 games under 500 and they're playing LeBron, Wade and Bosch. It was a waste of time. There was like nobody really excited to go to the games. I couldn't even convince my friends to go. It was just not even worth the trip. I don't want the playoffs to get watered down in baseball like that. Like right out of the gate, we're debating Braves versus Brewers, right? And I came out, remember, I was like, I think the Braves win this one. And that was like a hot take, right? And they did it. But that's what you want. You want to be able to have a debate on the first round. If someone came to me and said the Hornets are beating the Heat in the first round, I'd be like, I'm going to check you into a mental health institution. Right.
So kind of same situation. My brother over the weekend, he goes to Santa Clara. He's a freshman at Santa Clara. He sat second row off the floor of the student section. Student section is on the baseline for Santa Clara Gonzaga. And Gonzaga was scoring on that goal against the Santa Clara student section in the first half. So he saw Drew Timme have like 20 first half points. He saw Chet do some crazy shit. And then he left at halftime. I said, how could you leave at halftime? He said, everybody wanted to leave and it was a blowout. And I had already seen everything I needed to see Gonzaga wise. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, that's fair because it's just not enjoyable for the back half of those games. And like the 8-1's no fun.
No, the 8-1's no fun. And I think that's a problem with the NBA, and they expanded it even further, which is just hilariously dumb to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to see baseball water it down. I think 12 is a good number. I think it's good to expand it so that you have more teams in the hunt down the stretch. That is good. You have more meaningful games in September and then going into the 1 week in October. I think that's good. You have more teams that are, relevant and alive. But other than that, I think 14 just saturates it too much. And that's something that I think they'll get to. I think they'll settle on that. And I think hopefully 12 will be where they want it. I think it tells you enough that the players don't even want it to be 14. Right? Yeah. There's no reason for the players not to want that other than the reasons that we're saying.
Right. Couple things before we wrap with 2 minutes on the Heat and the Bulls here. There are two non-starters for Major League Baseball. MLB will not reduce the free agency period from 6 years in baseball to 5 years in baseball. You have to play 6 years in order to hit free agency. That is a non-starter. If the union says 5 years or we're not playing, like we're not going to see baseball if the union demands 5 years. Also, the luxury tax is going to stay put at 214. The union wants it up to 245. Major League Baseball said, hell no, it's at 214.
214 is a slight bump though from where it was, right?
It was 210. Now it's up to 214.
Yay.
Yeah.
245 is nuts.
That's a left field wall renovation there.
Yeah, that is a left field wall. I think 245 is crazy. I think that's a little high.
It's stupid.
I think you could meet in the middle there, 220, 225.
I think so.
But yeah, 4 million bump, I don't even think calculates for like inflation. I think they've got to find a little bit more room than that. That's another one where I think they'll settle that. I really think the biggest issue here is service time manipulation. I really think that this is one of the more difficult things to get to the bottom of. But are these players going to die on that hill? Because again, it doesn't really affect them, right? It only affects the players that are in the minors. And we've seen in the past, they don't really go to bat for them too much. They're doing it a little bit more now. I think the best solution is this: eliminate Super 2. That's a great start, right? Like that in itself will aid the disincentivizing of bringing players up right away.
And to be honest, I don't think anyone cares enough.
No, just eliminate that shit. I think they're on to something with the top 100 ranked prospect thing. I think that if we sat down and we put our heads together, then if you and I sat down and put our heads together, we could come up with a better way to designate these players, right? I think that there's a better way to, if they're drafted in the first 5 rounds and they produce at a certain rate, like there's ways to figure this out to get to the bottom of this. And honestly, man, like I would be more willing to use even some advanced stats.
WRC plus.
I would rather use WRC plus with a minimum of 100 games or something like that than to use prospect rankings.
Yeah, no, I mean,
and this is coming from a guy who ranks prospects,
right? Like for hitters, if you're putting up a WRC plus over 110 in more than 100 career minor league games or something, like 100 is low, but in over, I don't know, 500 career minor league games, 400 career minor league games, you have to be added to a 40-man or you have to make your MLB debut in X number of days.
Exactly. And the big thing there too is your main prospects, you're gonna want to get them as many at bats and reps as you can. So these are guys that are gonna get the reps, are gonna get the at bats. They're gonna want to develop them. So I think if you get a certain amount of repetition and you get a certain amount of production, compiled up, and you can do it in percentiles, like you can do different things. I think there's a way to be able to do that. The arbitration system in itself is a way of determining players' values. Obviously, we couldn't do it case by case with these players. That's the problem. But I think there's a way to be able to, I think, identify which guys are potential candidates to have their service time manipulated. Yep. There's almost the thing too that kind of tells me in it is you and I could sit here, I could rattle off 100 different prospects, and if I told you, you think his time would be do you think his service time would be manipulated? You would say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I bet you we'd have a pretty high degree of accuracy, right? There's just something there where we know which guys are and which guys aren't. And it's not just top 100 guys. There's just something there. And I think there's a way to identify it. And I think these are enough smart people to get to the bottom of that if they really want to. Especially if you're not going to change the number of years. And the most ironic part about the number of years in free agency argument is that teams are using the argument that, oh, well, our concern is that it'll mean that players stick with their original team even shorter because they get signed away and we get outbid. Yeah, that's because you're not spending money.
Right.
So it all just goes right back to them anyway. It's like, oh, no, our hands are tied. No, they're not.
No, they're not.
So it's just an excuse for them to not spend money. And like, it's just a wild circle that we're all running that all ends up going back to the same place, which is just owners being cheap.
Yeah.
And that's where it all goes back to.
Apparently last time they met, the union pitched things. Major League Baseball shot it down right away. They adjourned. Now they came back. Major League Baseball pitched things back to the union. They were reportedly unimpressed by all of it. They're hoping to hammer down another time to meet this week. According to USA Today, they both understand they need to come to a deal by tentatively the first week of February if they want spring training to start on time, which, by the way, is 3 weeks from now. At the very latest, first week of March, to not lose any regular season games. Before we wrap with the Heat and Bulls conversation for 2 minutes, because I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, just real quick, yes or no, does the Major League Baseball season lose games?
No, I still don't think so.
I say yes.
You're getting more bearish, huh? On things here.
Yeah, I just think you've got Elmo's beefing with Rocco right now. Rocco's a rock. He has no legs. Have you seen that stuff right now? Elmo's been flaming a rock recently. It's pretty hilarious, but I feel like these are just like Elmo and a rock having a conversation, and it's just not really going to work right now. So I think they're just going to keep on butting heads until they're like, oh shit, we're cut down to 135 this year. Let's get moving.
It might not be a bad thing. We need less games, but no, I want to start on time. I think they're going to find a way because at the end of the day, both sides lose money. And I think that's going to be what brings them together. I also just had an idea as we were talking about this. What if you had the minor leaguers vote on their peers, right? Like you're voting, you cast a poll across every single minor leaguer in their league, and they identify the most impressive players in their league.
Can we run it through just baseball? Can we use Google Forms?
Google Forms. But that's how you identify the players that fit into that group of service time manipulation candidates. Their peers voting on it. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing because that's something I bring into the prospect analysis I do too, is I like to hold myself accountable. If I have a hot take, if I have something, I reach out to players. I think this guy's a lot better than the industry gives him credit for. Like, what are your thoughts? And I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. When I've always thought that this guy was a stud or whatever, or maybe not.
Aram, you're high.
Or you're nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great way to fact check yourself. Doesn't mean I'm always going to listen to it, but it is a good way to fact check yourself. Who's going to know better than the players who are playing against each other? That's how we do a lot of things with the way, all-star games are selected. And is that the way that they do all pro in football? Right.
Maybe, I don't know.
But I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
I don't hate it.
I like it better than an arbitrary list, right? So, and on the prospect side, by the way, I just launched the call up. Finally, yep. We talked about how it's like, oh, this is the last prospect episode. It's live. I just did an underrated prospects That was the first episode. Definitely go subscribe, call up. I'm really excited about it. We got a lot of fun interviews on the way. And that podcast is going to be a lot of fun. So, and you'll be on that, I'm sure, very soon. So very excited about that. And definitely go check that out.
Very soon. A couple of underrated guys. You highlighted Curtis Mead in the Rays system, like yet another guy who could plug in and be an infielder for the Tampa Bay Rays. We talked about, like something that I think a lot of people that watched the Rays realized was that when Taylor Walls came up and it wasn't Wander Franco, there was this huge letdown. Like everybody shrugged their shoulders, but then they realized that Taylor Walls was like the best defensive shortstop of all time. Yes. Tampa pumps these fuckers out.
One after another. And Walls is poised to kind of replace Joey Wendell. That's why they traded him. And that's the annoying thing is they flip Wendell. They go get a super athletic outfielder prospect in Cameron Meisner. And then they just replace a guy that will do the same exact thing Wendell did in Taylor Walls. And it's just, it's so annoying. It's so annoying, but props to them. I'm super excited to talk about those kind of things. So I know that it's kind of hard to find the podcast right now because it's like still so new on Apple Podcasts. So if you can't find the call up, go over to my Twitter at Aram Late Nate, and it's in my bio, the link to the Twitter account there for the call up, and then you can keep up there as well.
I'll also have you link it in the episode description.
Boom, genius.
There we go.
This is why you get the big bucks.
Galaxy brain. Yeah, I'm still waiting on that big buck paycheck, actually. I'm hoping I get one of the oversized paychecks like Dukes in semi-pro. I'm hoping that
I'm going to present you with $100 and a giant check.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm going to do the underbite smile. Hey, 2:30 p.m. TNT, the Bulls take on the Grizzlies here. Bulls coming off of 3 straight losses. Alex Caruso back in the lineup. I've got a trade to pitch you here. Caruso, okay, here's the thing. You were shitting on my Bulls. Understandable. Totally understandable after like 260 combined points after getting thrashed by Golden State. And I already blocked the first game out of my memory. Brooklyn. By the way, that sucks that KD's out 4 to 6 weeks.
Thank goodness that it wasn't torn ACL, but
oh my God. That is the greatest offensive player of all time. I'm going to stand by that.
Yes.
Oh my God.
7-foot guy who can shoot and off the dribble, catch and shoot, take it to the rim. He can do everything.
That dude has 2 of the coolest nicknames ever, Durantula and the Slim Reaper.
And he hates him, I think.
He hates him. He also has the coolest commercial of all time. It's the Gatorade commercial, I want to say. I'm not talking about who's the best. I'm talking about who's the baddest. Yeah. And it was Kevin Durant. Like that thing was so badass. But yeah, quick recovery to Kevin Durant. But the Bulls, I think they are a big away from being a serious contender. I think they need a little bit more size. So I'm going to throw you this here. Kobe White, I think, is expendable right now.
Yes.
Kobe White and a pick swap to Orlando for Mo Bamba.
Why would they want another point guard, though?
I think they can move forward with him. I think Kobe White's a scorer. Like, I think on his best year, Kobe White's 18 a game, maybe 20 a game.
Him and Cole Anthony coexist?
Him and Cole Anthony. I mean, Suggs, like you just have this gluttony of guards there.
Markelle Fultz.
Yeah, but like Fultz is not the answer here. I think Kobe White's a better plan moving forward than Fultz.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I think it's a good trade.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Wendell Carter.
Yeah.
Get him back.
No, that ship is sailed as I shed a tear. I'm also kind of pissed Lowry Markkanen's in Cleveland now because he's having a resurgence.
I won't hold my breath on that one though. I don't believe it. But we get the trade deadline on Wednesday, right, for the NBA?
I think so.
That'll be fun.
That will be fun.
Your Bulls are stuck. I think you guys are going to run into a bit of a wall, especially with LaVine out. Hope LaVine comes back. The Heat will finish the number 1 seed in the East. Damn. With KD out, with LaVine out, the Heat will finish. They get Bam back this week.
Head of Milwaukee.
They're like behind. They're behind.
But like Giannis.
The Heat will finish number 1 in the East. They get Oladipo soon too. And I think they might make a deal. Don't sleep on Pat Riley.
Damn. I love Bam Adebayo. I've been a Bam truther for a long time, much like being a Lonzo Ball truther.
I love Lonzo. We can meet in the middle there.
Yeah.
Lonzo's been a bucket, and he's gonna have to step his game up without Levine out. He's gonna be a little bit more of a scorer.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be fun to watch.
Kings supporting Kings. I got Bam Adebayo. You got Lonzo Ball.
It's gonna be ugly when the Heat play the Bulls in the postseason. Just know that.
Damn, I'm so looking forward to that though. He's Aram. I'm Jack. Every link you need, including the link to the call up, Aram's new prospect podcast, is in the episode description. It's an iPad episode tomorrow. I break out the whiteboard on the iPad with Pete as we play GM of the San Diego Padres. It's going to be a good one tomorrow.